Hey, good morning. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to see who all is going to jump in and join us. And then we'll get started. And if you think or if you have any questions about anything, just throw them at me. All right, good morning, good morning. We're going to get started in just a second. I want to make sure that whoever wants to join us is able to get on. So I'm going to wait just a minute to see if we're going to have some stragglers jump in this morning. So one thing I will say before we get going is my sincere apologies for recent weeks in technical difficulty. And I didn't mean to get anybody confused if I did. I feel like I got a lot of people confused about the times for Zoom meetings. I messed up really bad one week because I thought that I usually Zoomed at 10 and 11, and it was actually 10 and 11:30. And as soon as I threw out that 11, it got people all messed up. So that was my fault. Okay. So I'm sure I don't want to get too far ahead, especially if we still do have a few stragglers that jump in with us. I had a good handful come in this morning to do an in-person review session, and that was nice to actually see like real people. That was nice. But here's what I'm going to do. Now, I am going to be using the test that I am building to help us with review. So I'm not just grabbing questions out of thin air, like I am legit pulling questions from a copy of my test to help us review for what's coming. So just keep in mind that you're getting ready to have your first taste of one of my combo assessments, because it does cover both. It covers Wild West and city stuff. And there is, a method behind the madness, right? The fact that I don't want you guys forgetting anything that we're talking about, because everything we learned from Wild West all the way up until the 1920s, all that information, roughly 50 years worth of history, is going to be on your midterm that will come up in October. So you can't forget anything. That's why we got to make sure that we are building on the information as we go, which makes these review sessions even that more important and vital. So I'm just going to keep watching to make sure I don't miss anybody as they pop up. Let me go ahead and make my screen a little bit better. Okay. All right, so let's get into it. So here's the plan. The plan that I have is for us to go over Wild West stuff first, just because that's the first stuff that we got into. That might be the stuff that either you missed stuff in the very beginning or you've already started to forget it. Hopefully not, but it could happen. There are a lot of people and names and terms, which is why I have you do those ID and SQ sheets, because that's where I'm pulling all this stuff from. Again, there is a reason for everything I do. I promise you that. So I might call on you every once in a while to throw me an answer, and we'll see how it goes. Let's see, I can't find, where's my beginning sheet? I got it all messed up. Okay, all right, so let's start with Wild West stuff and we'll see how you do, okay? All right, so starting first with miners. All right, so Wild West is 4 categories, right? Miners, ranchers and cowboys, farmers, and Native Americans, okay? 4 categories. All right, first up, what type of mining, and this is a repeat question from your quiz, what type of mining extracts shallow deposits by using the idea of the pan and water and kind of shaking the gold to the bottom? Y'all don't want to talk to me this morning.
Sod mining?
Say it
Or
again.
something like that, sod busting?
Sod busting is talking about our farmers.
Sod busting.
Well, when it comes to our miners, we're talking about pacer mining.
Oh.
Yeah, pacer mining. The idea of sifting
Yeah.
gold in those pans. And then the other big one that we talked about is hydraulic mining, which is the idea of using water pressure. It's almost like using a firefighter's hose and using water pressure to erode away the side of a hill or mountain to show that gold up underneath. So those are the two big types of mining that we talked about. And then, like, you don't go by Kenneth though, do you? Do you go by Maddox?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought, because somebody.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Sorry, I think it's my internet.
Oh, okay.
I had a question and now it's gone. Oh, one thing that's going to ask is about the Comstock lode of Virginia City, Nevada. Maddox, do you remember what was found? The largest supply of what?
Where?
No, what was it?
Silver?
Yeah, silver. Yeah, the Comstock lode of Virginia City, Nevada. We found the biggest supply of silver. That was a quiz question, and it is going to be a repeat test question. Okay, I'm going to jump around just a little bit. Let's go and talk about, speaking of sod busters and farmers, let's talk about the Homestead Act. Levi, do you remember how many acres of land could somebody get through the Homestead Act?
150 acres.
160. You were close. You just about got it. 160. So 160 acres. And the whole point was to encourage people to go out west and start trying to develop this land, because, you know, we need to start populating it enough to make states out of all this new territory. So you had to be 18 years old. It was a $10 registration fee. You had to live on it for 5 years. And that was actually your quiz question. Your quiz question was, what did you have to do for 5 years? You had to live on it before you actually got the deed from the government saying that land was yours. So that's the Homestead Act. And then we're going to use a type of farming known as dry farming, because the Great Plains are very different. Justin, let me ask you this question. What crop do we grow the most on the Great Plains?
It's wheat.
Yes, it is wheat, right? It's called the wheat belt being out west. So we grow so much wheat out on the Great Plains, but the problem that farmers are going to have to face, whoops, sorry, I haven't moved recently, is that if it gets really, really hot and dry, we might have what we call prairie fires, and we might have farmers that lose their whole entire crop, and that's one of many issues, right? It's also known as Tornado Alley, all the windstorms and tornadoes that are out there, extreme droughts, blizzards in the winter. So these farmers really have a rough time of it out west. Here, let's see, let's do another question. Oh, this was also a quiz question. It asked you about a glut of wheat. So if somebody says there is a glut of something, Maddox, what does that mean?
I have no idea.
Well, it's almost
Bunch?
like if somebody's eating like a bunch of donuts and we say they're really gluttonous, it's too much, right? They're eating too much. Well, a glut of wheat means we have too much wheat out there to be sold. And if you have too much of something, what happens to the price?
It goes down.
Yeah, price goes down because you got to get rid of it. So of course, if the price goes down, that means our farmers are not going to make as much money. So that's going to be a big problem. Now, speaking of 160 acres of land, we have the Dawes Act that is going to be created by the U.S. government to give 160 acres of land to what group of people? Levi, you know?
No.
Native Americans. So the Dawes Act is different than the Homestead Act. The Dawes Act is given 160 acres of land to Native Americans to farm and ranch on. Now, we really don't have to worry about it that much because guess what? Like every other promise, the government doesn't follow through with it, right? And so they don't end up actually doing it, but we still talk about it anyway. Okay, now let's talk about another, a vaquero. That was one of your ID&SQ words. Again, we define those and do those for a reason, okay? A vaquero is talking about a Mexican cowboy. Justin, what is something that a vaquero or a Mexican cowboy would have shown our American cowboys how to look or dress or do? What is something they would have taught them?
They would have taught like roping. We took their like sombrero idea and made it smaller.
Yeah, exactly. They would have taught them roping skills.
Rope technique, I think.
Yep, rope technique. That's actually where we got the idea of rodeos. That's where we got our dress, using the chaps on our legs, using the bandana so that we wouldn't choke on dust and dirt. We obviously shortened the cowboy or the sombrero to make the cowboy hat that we have today. So they're going to help influence greatly what our American cowboys look and do. I had another question. Where'd it go? I lost it. Okay, jumping back to Native Americans, let's talk about the Sand Creek Massacre. Again, this was another quiz question. Sand Creek Massacre, the Shawnee had come waving a white flag. Now, what does a white flag generally mean? Justin, I'll go to you first on this. What does a white flag mean?
It's a meaning for surrender.
Yeah, exactly. So the Shawnee had come.
For surrender.
Yeah, exactly. Had come to surrender, and John Shivington and his army comes out. They don't really care. They see Native Americans as a problem, right? And they just slaughter men, women, children, slaughter the whole entire tribe. And that's what happens at Sand Creek. Because they're trying to get rid of the problem, right? We see Native Americans as a problem. They're taking up land and good resources, and we just want them out of the way. I mean, it's a sad story, but it's very much true as to what the U.S. government was doing. We wanted people to think that the Indians were these savage, uncivilized people, right, that we just needed to get rid of, which is what happens with all these Indian battles. The U.S. government encourages the killing of buffalo. Levi, why do we need the buffalo out of the way?
Because Native Americans' main source of food.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And they're also in the way of progress. What are we trying to build, Maddox? What are we trying to build down the middle?
Railroad?
Yeah, the railroad.
Ooh.
Good question. Follow-up question, actually. The railroad. We have the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific Railroad that meet at Promontory Point, Utah to connect and make the Transcontinental Railroad. But the U.S. government didn't have money during the 1860s to pay for the railroad. So, Maddox, do you remember how the U.S. government paid these railroad companies to build the railroad?
They sold land.
Yeah, they gave them land. They said, you have land on either side of the railroad and you can sell that land to make however much money you want off of it. And that's how you get your paycheck. And so these companies, of course, were charging crazy prices for all this property so they could make tons of money off of it. Okay. All right, let's move on. Another question. Hold on, I lost my place. Oh, Wounded Knee, jumping back to Native Americans. Wounded Knee is going to be the last of the Indian battles. The U.S. government sends the army down because they hear that Native Americans have been practicing a ritual dance. Justin, do you remember the name of that ritual dance?
Spirit dance.
Say it again, I didn't hear you.
The spirit dance.
Ghost dance. Yeah. Yeah, they were practicing the ghost dance, and you're like, well, what? How can they make a dance illegal? But it happened. It's kind of like the idea of the U.S. government trying to make twerking illegal. Like, how are you actually going to make a dance illegal? Well, anyway, they tried to take away any hope the Native Americans had, basically. So they heard they were practicing this dance. They went down onto the reservation and just, slaughtered over 200 Sioux, men, women, and children. We do lose Sitting Bull, one of the great Sioux chiefs. He's going to be shot during the Battle of Wounded Knee, during that altercation, excuse me. All right, moving on. Let's see, what is it that is going to spur the settlement of a lot of states, including Colorado, Arizona, and Montana? What's going to make those states be populated enough to become states?
Boom
Levi?
town?
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
Matt. You got it. Yeah. Finding gold. That's what's going to make a lot of these, especially the southwestern states, be populated enough, is people finding gold. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Let's talk about going back to Native Americans. Let's talk about the Dakota Sioux. The Sioux had been given the right, like the property deed to their land up in the Black Hills of the Dakotas. But unfortunately, a settler who had snuck on their land illegally is going to find gold. And of course, once the U.S. government knows that that land is good for something, guess what? They're going to want the Sioux to move. Well, they don't want to. It's kind of like me coming to your house and telling you, hey, I need you to pack up your stuff and leave because we found some gold on your land. How many of us would be like, okay, sure, I'll move, no problem. No, it's not going to happen, right? So the Sioux are going to fight for that land, and it's going to go down in history as the Battle of Little Bighorn. Levi, do you remember the U.S. general that was killed at the Battle of Little Bighorn?
Is it the Custer dude?
It is.
George
It is
Custer?
Custer. Yeah. It is George Custer, and history portrays him as being a victim. Poor Custer in the 7th Cavalry, right? That he was slaughtered by these savage Indians, which is not the truth, because again, the Native Americans are fighting for land that was promised to them by the U.S. government. So they see Custer and the cavalry as being intruders on their land and property. And it was Crazy Horse that was the Sioux chief during that battle. Okay. All right, moving on. As we start to talk about inventions, let's talk about some inventors. Justin, can you give us the inventor of the light bulb?
Thomas Edison.
It is Edison. Maddox, what about the inventor of the telephone?
I remember that on like the last page or something like that on the packet. Can't remember who.
Bell, Alexander Graham Bell.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So it was Bell. We can't forget those inventors because we got questions tomorrow on those inventors. All right. Now, speaking of inventions, we have some inventions that are coming that are going to be using petroleum. So we have Edwin Drake, who discovers oil, which we're going to refine down to make petroleum, and then clean it even further to make it into kerosene. And kerosene is what we're going to be using in lamps and stoves. And we're actually going to use that in place of well blubber. We had well blubber we used before we used kerosene. Fun fact. Okay. All right, moving on. Let's talk about our next question. You might have remembered this from being in your packets. Because of a shortage of workers in California, the U.S. government is going to hire 10,000 workers from this overseas country. Levi, do you know what country we bring in 10,000 workers from?
China.
It is China. We have 10,000 workers that come over from China to help us build the railroads. Let's see. Oh, this one's a tough one. I'll throw you a bone. I'll help you out on this one. Corporations are going to buy new machines and start being able to mass produce, which we call an economies of scale. If your company and business can mass produce anything, that means that you've got a lot of product and you can offer it at a lower price, which is good for us. But the bad thing that's going to come about is we're going to put a tariff, which is taxes on imports, to where people will buy what kind of stuff, Justin? Products made where?
In America.
In America, that's right. We want people to buy American-made products, which means taxes on imports is really high, so that you're kind of forced to buy American-made products versus stuff from other countries, regardless of whether our stuff is actually the better quality. We just want you to buy American-made. Okay. All right, let's talk about some more terminology. Again, you had a lot of vocab that went, especially with your city's units, about the difference in vertical integration and horizontal integration. All right, so tell me this. What businessman who had a monopoly on oil, let's discuss that first. Who was it that had a monopoly on oil? Anybody?
Rockefeller.
Yes. All right. So John D. Rockefeller owned 90% of the oil industry, 90%. And he had horizontal integration. He went and bought up all these mom and pop oil refineries. So he had all the same, sorry, I lost it again. There we go. He had all the same type of business. Whereas the guy who had a monopoly on steel, who remembers his name?
Carnegie.
Yes,
Carnegie.
you're on fire. Yeah, so Carnegie had a monopoly on steel, and he is going to use vertical integration to where he owns the company, he owns the trucks that are or wagons, not trucks. He owns the wagons that are delivering stuff. He owns he pays the delivery guys. He owns all step in the operation. So he is not spending out any extra money. So that way he's keeping out all the profits, whereas Rockefeller's having to pay out to have his stuff delivered. He's paying somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So he's having to pay out to where through vertical integration, you own all steps in the process. Therefore, no middleman. Therefore, you keep all the profit. So we actually killed two birds with one stone going over those entrepreneurs. Okay, let's keep the ball rolling. Let's see. I talked about that one already. Hold on. Let's go next to, let's talk about some more terminology. Speaking of your vocab from chapter 12 and cities, what is it called when a union strikes and employers hire in replacement workers? What just happened? What did they do to the workers? The workers are outside striking and they did what?
Fire them?
No, they locked up. Somebody said it.
Blacklisted them.
Well, they are going to blacklist them for rioting, but they did a lockout. So they locked them out, and they probably from some kind of back door brought in what we call replacement workers, also nicknamed scabs. We brought in replacement workers to keep the company going for the day. Here's another good question. So department stores are only going to be found in big cities. But if you live out on the Great Plains and you still want to order something, how can you still buy something from a major department store?
Catalog.
Yes, you can order it through a catalog. And these catalogs are almost like a super Walmart in a book. Like you can order anything your heart desires, but I hope you don't want it anytime soon because it's going to take a solid 8-12 months for it to be shipped and delivered. It's not Amazon Prime, all right? It's not 2 days. But it's going to take forever because it's being shipped from the railroad to whatever store you are purchasing from. Okay, next question. I lost my place already. Oh well. Okay. Again, another vocab term. When a single company achieves control of an entire market, what is that called?
Monopoly.
Yes, a monopoly. Very good. So again, all these questions are going to be, again, speaking of railroad, let's talk about the famous railroad scandal, which is the credit Mobler scandal. And that's where these investors were going and accepting bribes from the business owners through investing in all this illegal stock. And it was happening during Ulysses S. Grant's presidency. But the credit Mobler scandal will be on your test tomorrow as well. All right, let's see. Another question. What technique was used for breaking a union in which the company refused to allow workers onto their property? Oh, we already talked about a lockout. Never mind. Never mind. That was a lockout. Let's see. Oh, what invention would enable factories to produce more goods because they can extend their hours and work way into the night? What invention is going to help with that?
The light bulb.
The light bulb, yes, and being able to set up electricity. Good. Alrighty, let's see. Let's talk about labor unions. So there's three, I'm sorry. There's 3 you're going to be tested on tomorrow. Number 1 is Knights of Labor. Knights of Labor is started up by Terrence Powderly, and they take all types of workers, skilled and unskilled. Well, that one doesn't work out very well. It fails pretty quickly. But the second one, which is the American Federation of Labor under Samuel Gompers, gotta love that name, takes only skilled workers. And skilled workers means a blacksmith, plumber, electrician. They have some type of trade skill. So these skilled workers are going to be able to kind of get more, and somebody's going to negotiate because, again, they have a valuable trade skill that they want. They don't want to lose that worker. And then Eugene V. Debs is the other guy, and he is going to be operating the United Railroad Workers labor union. Sorry, I forgot what I was talking about. So Eugene V. Debs, United Railroad Workers, and we can't forget him. We're actually going to talk about him later in another unit. All right, let's make sure that we know all of our people that we're going to see on tomorrow's test. And this, I'm going to bounce back and forth between cities and Wild West stuff because I'm hoping this is a better way for you to hold on to it. Okay. What was the name, because I've already told you this, what was the name of the Indian chief that will be shot and killed at the Battle of Wounded Knee?
Chief Joseph.
No, that's going to be Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull will be the Lakota Sioux chief that is shot and killed at the Battle of Wounded Knee. Who is the Indian chief that is going to kill Custard at the Battle of Little Bighorn? Got that one? Crazy Horse. That was Crazy Horse. All right, what about the Nez Perce chief that had his people walk for over 1,000 miles trying to escape the U.S. military? And this one was actually a quiz question too. No. Chief Joseph. Chief Joseph. All right, what about, what is, excuse me, what is a town called if people are making money and gold's being found?
A boom town.
A boom town. All right, so what is it then called if that town is just abandoned almost overnight?
Ghost town.
Town or a bus.
Ghost town.
Yep, good, you got it. Ghost town. Okay. What is the name of the historian who studied the frontier and said that the frontier had officially now been settled? He called it the frontier thesis. Now, he was on your quiz last time too, and this is Frederick Turner. Frederick Turner. Let's see. Oh, we've already talked about him, but we'll say it again. Who was it that was the cavalry commander that was killed at Little Bighorn?
George Custer.
Custard, yeah. Yep, it was Custard. All right, going on to some city stuff. Who was it that discovered a large supply of oil? All right, that was Edwin Drake. Edwin Drake. All right, who was the guy that I talked about in one of my videos last week that tricked no, wrong guy, forget that. That tricked Cornelius Vanderbilt out of millions of dollars in stock. He was price gouging on stock.
Jay Gould.
Yes, Jay Gould. Good job. Okay. All right, let's see. Again, the other big thing is making sure that you know what monopoly owner had what monopoly, right? So let's say it one more time to make sure we got it. We know that Rockefeller had a monopoly on oil. Vanderbilt has a monopoly on
Steel.
railroads. And then Carnegie has a monopoly on, did I say Carnegie already?
Steel.
It's steel. I can't remember now which one I said. Sorry. Who else? I think that's the big things. And I'm actually getting ready to be shut out because it won't let me go more than 35 or 40 minutes on Zoom. So it's about to shut me down. But we pretty much walked through together your test that you're going to be seeing come up tomorrow. Is there anything that I didn't go over or anything that you want to talk about before we stop? Because I don't want this thing to end on us and you didn't get a chance to ask any questions. Nobody? Okay. All right, well, that is it. My recommendation would be to take a minute, and if you have the packet of notes, if you got that, whether you came to school to pick it up or you got it when you were driving through to pick up schedules several weeks ago, if you have the packet of notes, I would skim through that and review. If not, I would click through my PowerPoints in the Chapter 11 Wild West and Chapter 12 Cities. I would click through just to do one more quick review to make sure that you got it. I'm hoping that I don't have the trouble that we all faced on the map test because it does have a timer on it. So when you go in and open it, you better be ready to bust it out and get it done and do your best on it. So that is what's coming tomorrow. We'll finish and do our first combo test. I am going to continue working on grades. I got to get all grades done by Thursday because guess what? It's progress report time. It's crazy. We're already 3 weeks in. It doesn't feel like it. I don't know. Maybe it does to you, but we're already 3 weeks in, which means we're at the halfway point, working towards report cards. So that's what's coming up. And if you haven't noticed already in Google Classroom, I've already put in our next unit, We will officially start our next unit tomorrow, so make sure if you want to go ahead and start working on some of your IDs and SQs, there is no packet for this one. This is a very, very short unit. We're only going to take probably 4 or 5 days to go through it, and then we got to move on. So if you wanted to go ahead and start working on your IDs or the immigration activity, that is totally up to you. But we're going to officially get into it tomorrow after you finish your unit test. All right, if nobody has any questions, comments, or concerns, we're going to call it a day.
So the quiz or test is going to be on another Google form?
Yes, that is what I'm going to be working on today, and fingers crossed it goes a lot smoother than previous assessments, but I'm hoping today I'll be able to work out all the kinks. Yeah, but it'll go live. It'll go live first thing in the morning. I'll probably set it up to open up at either 7 or 8 o'clock. And then you just choose when you do it. But whenever you go in to do it, make sure you've got time to get it all done. There's not really going to be room for you to stop and take a break. All right, guys, it's about to close me out, so I better go ahead and say bye before it just shuts off. So if you think of anything, send me a remind, email me any questions you have. And that's it. We'll call it a day. All right, bye, guys.
My
Bye.